Hello everyone, and welcome back to the next installment of our 9.2 raid guides, proudly presented by Coinbase. This is Crzypck from Team Liquid, and today we'll show you how to kill the Jailer on Heroic in the Sepulcher of the first ones. The Jailer is a 3-phase encounter, with each phase based on timers, not health. The better you perform early on, the lower the boss's health will be in the final phase, and the easier it'll be to put him into the ground. You'll notice the room's floor is covered in holes. These come into play throughout the entirety of the fight. If you fall into one of the holes, you die. Overall, this is a pretty long encounter, and just with how many different mechanics you need to learn, it'll probably take you longer to kill the heroic Jailer than the first couple of mythic bosses. Now, we're not saying that as any kind of deterrent, we just want to make sure you have the proper expectations going in. Alright, let's jump into stage 1. The themes of this stage are bombs, pillars, and line of sight. The boss periodically puts out several Runes of Domination, which are basically bombs over people's heads. These take for mild damage to the affected players. After a few seconds, the bombs will explode, dealing heavy damage to the raid. However, if you jump into a hole and the bomb explodes inside that hole, it doesn't actually deal any damage to the raid at all. It'll also cause that hole to then get filled by a large pillar that'll break line of sight. An important note here, if you jump into a hole too early, even with a bomb, you will still die. You need to jump in the hole with about 1 second left on the debuff timer. Also, each bomb needs to run into their own hole. The bomb exploding does still deal damage to the person that actually has the debuff, and so if two people jump into the same hole, both bomb explosions hit both people and you'll probably die. The boss also periodically casts Chains of Oppression, which will grip the entire raid inside the boss and then put a big circle under him. After 6 seconds, the circle explodes, killing anybody inside of it. It'll also do damage to everybody in the raid, but that isn't as lethal as long as you're outside of the circle. While you're trying to run out of the circle, there will be a pullback pulling you back in, so use movement abilities if you have them. Martyrdom is a 4-part tank combo. Part 1 roots the tank in place for 4 seconds and puts a circle around them. Part 2 is called Persecution, which is a big physical tank smack that also increases the tank's physical damage taken by 200% for 40 seconds. Part 3 is called Suffering, which does mild raid-wide damage and applies a 21-second dot to everybody. Part 4 is a meteor-style ability called Misery, dealing massive damage within the circle around the tank, split evenly between everybody hit, and knocking back the entire raid. You'll need the majority of your raid soaking this last hit, or people will die. We recommend popping raid cooldown going into both parts 3 and 4, the Suffering and Misery, as it's a lot of combined raid damage. Also, watch where you're positioned. The knockback effect is based on the center of the soak circle. If you get knocked into a hole in the floor, you die. After the end of each tank combo, you'll need the tanks to swap. By the way, the Jailer hits tanks really freaking hard. You'll want active mitigation up for as close to the entire time you're actively tanking as possible. Aside from all of this, the boss will also periodically cast Torment, putting little circles on most of the raid. Spread for these, they'll explode a few seconds later. The last stage 1 ability is called Relentless Domination, which is a 5-second casted ability. At the end of the cast, every player who's within line of sight of the Jailer is mind controlled and then needs to be killed by the raid. This is bad. To avoid this, hide behind a pillar. After the cast completes, any existing pillars are destroyed and the holes they were in close up. Then this is followed by Tyranny, which will put a line connecting to most of the raid. Each line will then have a bolt shoot down it, hitting anyone within its path for moderate damage and leaving a 15-second dot. Do not get hit by anybody's line other than your own. Alright, let's go through the strategy here for phase 1. This stage is fully scripted, ends at 3 minutes and 7 seconds in, and the pattern of abilities is always exactly the same. Because the holes will close up after they've had a pillar, you'll need to rotate around the room in whatever direction you choose. Keep the boss near-ish to the center, but not too close. If you get too close to the center, you'll actually fall into the edge into Azeroth and you will die. As a general rule, bombs should always be put in holes slightly ahead of where the boss currently is. It's important to keep an eye on timers and always know when the tank combos and the mind control casts are coming, as they're the two most impactful abilities here. Your raid leader, or a tank, should call both 10 seconds and 5 seconds before the tank combo starts, so your raid knows when to start moving to the tank and to get into soak. The second mind control cast will overlap with a set of torment circles. The circles will actually explode about 2 seconds before the mind control cast completes, so the raid needs to be spread, but as close to the pillars as possible. As soon as the circles explode, you need to get behind the pillar, hiding from the boss immediately. This is then followed with the lines and the tank combo, so watch your feet and then go help soak the tank. The third mind control cast immediately follows a tank combo, and this is actually pretty scary. You'll want to call for this tank combo early and have the entire raid soak it. As soon as the misery hits and you land from the knockback, you'll need to run and get behind the pillar. You only have a few seconds. Broadly speaking, in this phase, getting hit by either the mind control or being knocked back into holes are the two easiest ways to die, so be careful. After that third mind control cast, which happens at about 2 minutes and 47 seconds in, the boss just kind of chills for 20 seconds, and then you enter stage 2, which begins at 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Here, all of the abilities from stage 1 cease, except Torment, and the Jailer gets a bunch of new mechanics. This stage is all about giant evil glowy pillars and having tanks break them for as long as possible. At that 307 mark, and then every 44 seconds, the boss casts Unholy Attunement. This will create 3 pillars around the room in set locations, starting out at the outer edges. Each subsequent cast of this will add another pillar to each location. If there's still a pillar standing at one of the 3 initial spots, the new one for that line will just be one step closer to the center of the room. This stage ends when any one of those lines has 3 pillars in a row connecting from the outer edge to the center of the room. How long that takes depends on your raid. It could be as soon as the 3rd cast of Unholy Attunement, or as late as the 6th cast if you execute perfectly. By the way, each pillar does have this void zone thing around it. Don't stand in this unless you're the tank that's actively breaking the pillar. The way to control these pillars is with the tank mechanic, Shattering Blast. This will put a big circle around the targeted tank for 5 seconds. After it expires, the circle will explode, dealing heavy damage to anyone within the circle. Importantly, this will also destroy a pillar that's within the circle. You will get 2 casts of Shattering Blast in between each Unholy Attunement, so you can always destroy 2 of the 3 pillars created. As you start getting pillar sets that will have 2 pillars in a line going towards the center, always destroy pillars closest to the middle. If your tanks are successfully able to destroy a pillar each time Shattering Blast is cast, and are always prioritizing pillars closer to the middle, you'll be able to prolong stage 2 until the 6th Holy Attunement cast. At that point, it's no longer possible to delay, and that will push stage 3. While the tanks are dealing with these pillars, there's several other mechanics to know about. Torment will still occur in stage 2, but now the circles explode and then leave swirlies behind at the site the circle exploded. The swirlies will then explode a couple seconds later themselves, so don't stand in them. The boss also casts a new ability called Decimator, which will put a very large blue swirly on the ground somewhere. If you stand in the swirly when it explodes, you die. It'll also knock back the entire raid and apply a 21-second dot. This knockback is really dangerous because all of the holes are reopened in stage 2, so don't get knocked back into a hole and die. The last mechanic for stage 2 is Rune of Compulsion. This will put a large mark over the heads of several people for 4 seconds. When it expires, they'll all be mind controlled and be given a shield. While mind controlled for this, the characters will run directly to the edge of the room and try to jump off. You'll want to counter this with slows and roots, like Binding Shot. Ursul's Vortex is also amazing here. If you get a rune, run directly under the boss. You'll want every one of the runes stacked up tightly so your crowd controls hit everybody. All DPS should hard swap and AoE the MCs down, break out the shield, and release your friends. Once a line of 3 pillars is created, you'll enter stage 3. This starts with the boss stunning everyone in the raid for 10 seconds and doing a little RP thing. The pillars will all disappear except for the completed line of 3. Stage 3 is all about controlling Azeroth's health. You'll see a bar for her health pop up. If it hits 0, the boss will walk towards the middle of the room and slam the World Soul with his mace, killing Azeroth and wiping the raid. You need to kill him before this happens. Fortunately, you'll start stage 3 with a big buff, increasing all of your secondary stats. You should use Bloodlust immediately when you enter stage 3. During this stage, Jailer will keep both Decimator and Torment from stage 2. Decimator works exactly the same, don't get knocked into holes. However, the Torment gets yet another twist. This time, after the swirlies explode, they'll now each also spawn an add. The adds will chain cast Cry of Loathing, which does mild raid-wide damage, but applies a stacking haste reduction debuff. These adds are stationary, but are interruptible, stunnable, and can be knocked back and gripped. You'll want to try to have these dropped relatively close to the boss, then knock back and grip them up as quickly as possible. Try not to let any casts get off and blow them up. The boss also periodically casts Defile, which works exactly like it did back in the day on the Lich King fight. This starts as a small goop puddle. If anyone stands in the puddle, it'll grow rapidly. A single puddle failed badly enough will actually fill the entire room in goop, which is bad, because on top of just growing, standing inside the goop deals 14k damage a second. As soon as the Defile cast goes out, the entire raid, including the tank and boss, needs to move 30 yards away. Don't touch Defile. Defile is bad. The boss will also sometimes put Chains of Anguish on the tank, connecting them to 3 other players. These are large chains that you'll see. It deals ticking damage to both the tank and the other affected people, and transfers damage from the tank onto the connected people for up to 40 seconds. You'll just need the people connected to the tank to run away, and when they get more than 30 yards away, the chains will break. When they break, it'll do raid-wide damage to everyone. There's 2 more abilities here in this last stage. Rune of Domination will put a circle around several players that lasts 6 seconds. After the circle explodes, it'll apply a large healing absorb shield. Each circle's total healing absorb is split between everybody hit. You want the players with the rune to move to the boss, spread just far enough not to be overlapping, and then you want every single player helping soak one of these circles. Then, have a healer throughput cooldown assigned for each set of the circles, and then that healer pops their cooldown and just cranks AoE healing to clear off the absorbs as quickly as possible. If anyone's absorb shield is not healed off after 18 seconds, they get permanently mind controlled. The last ability is Desolation. The boss will stop what he's doing, turn, and face Azeroth in the center of the room, and then shoot a laser at her. This will deal 20% of Azeroth's health, but this damage can be reduced based on how many players stand in the laser and soak it. You will want all of your players standing in this and soaking it. This phase overall is largely about control. Move the Jailer for Defile, soak the laser. Drop runes under the boss, blast healing to clear the absorbs, don't die to Torment, drop the swirlies near the boss, knock the adds together, blast them, silence them, don't let their casts go off, and bring down the Jailer before he kills Azeroth. And that's pretty much it. Fun fight, but long fight. Congrats on the AOTC mounts. If you enjoyed this guide, remember to like it and make sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch all of our previews, guides, kill videos, and more. A big thank you to Coinbase for making guides like these possible. From everyone here at Team Liquid, have a great day, and we'll see you for the next video.